In this video, we are going to be taking a look at comparing fractions and decimals. Now, you will need to get out your standards practice book and turn to page 245. So the goal for today is to be able to compare decimals, fractions, and mixed numbers on a number line. And as I said before, you need to turn to page 245. And what we will do is just unlock the problem together, and then we'll talk about some of these answers, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, so here's the problem on page 245. It says the tech club compared the weights of 3 cell phones. Esteban's phone weighed 4.7 ounces. Jill's phone weighed 4 3/5 ounces. Mona's phone weighed 4.35 or 4 3/5 ounces. Who has the phone with the lightest weight? You can use a number line to compare fractions and decimals. Now, a couple things that you do need to remember. Greater values on a number line lie farther to the right. We can even say lesser values on a number line farther to the left. Okay, so you can see this number line is starting at 4, and as we go to the right, the numbers do increase: 4 1/4, 4 1/2, 4 3/4, 5, 5 1/4, and so on. Okay, so it's important to understand just how a number line is set up, and many of you know that already. It's just good to think through it that way. Okay, so what it says, so first of all, what we do is we want to locate some benchmark or some benchmark fractions, okay, even some benchmark decimals. So some benchmark decimals, regular ones: 4, 4 25/100, 4 5/10, 4 75/100, okay, 5, 5 25/100. Now, what makes those decimals benchmark decimals is that they line right with benchmark fractions, okay, or benchmark mixed numbers. So 4 just is the whole number. 4 1/4, 4 1/2, 4 3/4, 5, 5 1/4. So whenever we say benchmark fractions or decimals, those are just some pretty standard decimals or fractions that you would use when you're even talking, in just normal conversation. For example, if we were looking at a glass of milk, we would say that it may be, 1/4 of the way full, okay, or something along those lines. We would not necessarily say, it's 2/7 of the way full, or we may say that glass of milk is maybe half full, okay, or 3/4 full, and so on. Okay, so that's what I mean by benchmark fractions. Okay, now step 2 that we've talked about we've already talked about benchmark fractions. Step 2, it says mark the weight of each cell phone on the number line. So this is already done for us. So I cleared everything out of there just to make it a little bit easier. So first of all, we need to find 4 7/10, and we can see that that is located right here on my number line. Okay, and then after that, 4 3/5, they've already located that as well. 4 3/5. All right. And finally, 4 3/5, right there on my number line. Okay, so we need to go back to our key tip of this video, is to remember that greater values on a number line lie farthest to the right. Okay, so if we were to say this, and if we want to figure out who has the phone with the lightest weight, we would say that the one that is 4 3/5 ounces, Mona, okay, would be the lightest because it goes furthest to the left on the number line. 4 3/5, okay, would be the next one, which would be Jill's. And then finally 4 7/10 would be Esteban's there. Okay, so we can see how the decimals and fractions can be compared. If you use a number line, remember, farthest to the left, the less the number is worth. Further to the right, okay, the greater the value is on a number line. Okay, so even answering this question, the upper right-hand corner, how can you identify the number with the least value? Okay, and what I want you to write, the number that is farthest left on the number line has the least value. Okay, so the number that is farthest left on the number line has the least value. Okay, so let's take a look at the try this part at the bottom of page 245. Okay, so it says mark each value on a number line, and we see that this number line is divided all the way up all the way already for us in 20ths. Okay, so there's 20 sections from 0 all the way to 1. Okay, now the first step is identifying where those benchmark fractions would go, where those benchmark decimals would go. Okay, now this is already done for us, but you think about the benchmark decimals: 25 hundredths, which represents 1/4, 5 tenths, which represents 1/2, 75 hundredths, which represents 3/4. Now, it may be a little tricky to figure out, okay, what's 1/4 of the way down? Okay, so what you can do is you can actually, since this is divided up into 20 sections, you can just take 20 and multiply that by 25 hundredths. Okay, so that means the 5th line down, okay, would be where 1/4 would go. Okay, it's a 5th of the way down. So that's a way to do this on your calculator. So we could see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1/4 lies right there. Okay, if we multiply that 20 times 0.5, we could see that would give us 10. And so the 10th line down would be at 1/2. Okay, and then finally 75 hundredths times 20 would be the 15th line down, right at 3/4. So that's a way to figure out where those benchmark fractions are. You always multiply the decimal times the total number of lines that your number line is divided up into. Okay, now if we're taking a look at 1/5, 5/8, and 2/10, comparing fractions and decimals can be a little tricky. However, a number line will make our life a lot easier. Okay, so if we need to figure out the greatest number of these, or which one has the greatest value, what we would do is we would first of all see that 1/5 lies right here on my number line. Okay, and also 2/10 lies right here, right at the same spot on my number line as well. Okay, now I can see that 5/8 goes all the way down here. Okay, we can see pretty much between the 1/2 and 3/4 mark. Okay, now between 1/5, 5/8, and 2/10, we can easily see, based upon the number line. It's not easy when you look at them right up here, but when you put them on a number line, much, much easier. Okay, 5/8 would be the number with the greatest value. Okay, and the reason why we know that, pretty simple. Okay, of the three numbers, 5/8 is farthest to the right. Okay, that's how we're going to explain how we decided this. Of the three numbers, 5/8 is farthest to the right on the number line. Okay, what we want to do now is I want you to turn your books to page 246, and we're going to take a look at numbers 1 and 2. And it says, for 1 and 2, identify the points on the number line, then write the greater number. Okay, so first of all, what we need to do is take a look at point B and then also point A. All right, now we could take a look at point A. What we want to do is look at number 1. It says point A as a decimal. Okay, now point A is a decimal. There's another way that we can do this. Now the decimals are already identified. I give you a little trick if the decimals are not identified on the number line. However, if they are identified, we could see within this that each section increases, okay, by 5 hundredths of a decimal. Okay, so there's 20 sections here, and each line represents a new 500. So in other words, so we can start out at even 0.5. So this would be 0.55, and this line would be 0.60, and then the next one would be 0.65 hundredths. Okay, so that would mean that line A would represent 0.7 or 7/10. Okay, we can even write A as a decimal, so 0 and 7/10 there, or just 7/10. All right, now point B is a fraction, so we could see point B is given to us as 25 hundredths. So what we can do is take 25 hundredths. Okay, and we can also take 25 hundredths and reduce that to simplest terms. So what we can do is divide both numerator and denominator by 25. That's going to give us 1/4. Okay, now we can see right on our number line, we have 25 hundredths and 7/10 all the way over here to the right, which is point A. Okay, what we could easily see is that 7/10 is greater. And why do we know that it's greater? Because it goes further to the left on, I'm sorry, further to the right on the number line. Okay, now for number 3, what you're going to need to do is locate each number on this number line right up here, then complete the sentence. The number with the greatest value is blank. Okay, now it is very easy, since we have the decimals already given to us, how to find the decimals on this number line. Okay, so 55 hundredths. Okay, so we know that 5/10 is right here. So since it's divided in 20, every new step is going to be another 5 hundredths. So right here, we could easily see that this is 55 hundredths. Okay, located right here on the number line. Okay, now 2/5 is a little tricky, but what I want to do is I want to take that 2/5, I'm going to make that into a decimal. So I'm going to divide the numerator by the denominator. That's going to give me 4/10. All right, so what I will do is I will find 4/10 on my number line. So I know that's 3/10, 35 hundredths, and then right here will be 4/10. Okay, but I'm just going to write 2/5 right up here. All right, now 46 hundredths. All right, so this would be 4/10, this would be 45 hundredths. So 46 hundredths would just go right beyond that 45 hundredths mark. Okay, now from here I can easily see, remember the number furthest to the right will be the number with the greatest value. So for this I can see that 55 hundredths would be the number with the greatest value. Okay, we're going to take a look at number 4 now. What we want to do is locate each number on the number line. Okay, so what the easiest thing to do, in my opinion, is always divide up your number line into 10 sections. Okay, whether it's 0 to 1, 1 to 2, or so on. 10 sections is pretty simple here. Okay, so first of all, 0.4, we need to go 4/10 of the way down. So 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10 would be right here on my number line. 4/10. Okay, now the next step, 3/4 of the way down. Okay, now 3/4 of the way down will not necessarily be in an exact spot, but what we can do is we can get out our calculators for this, and we can even take 3/4 and make that into a decimal. 3 divided by 4. That's going to give us 75 hundredths. Now, if we have 75 hundredths, we know that that 75 hundredths, first of all, that's 7/10, and then the 5 shows this it's going to be between the 7 and the 8, or 7/10 and 8/10 mark. So if this is 4/10, this will be 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10. So that's going to fall right in between that. So 3/4. And then finally, 15 hundredths here. We can see that the 1 is a 10th. So there's my 10th mark, and that 5 shows it's between the 1/10 and 2/10 mark here. So we have 15 hundredths would fall right here on my number line. Okay, now what we need to do is figure out the number with the greatest value, and we can easily see that between these numbers right here on the number line, the number with the greatest value is 3/4. Okay, what I want you to do now is pause the video, and I want you to complete numbers 5, 6, and 7 all by yourself, and when you press play, I will have the answers for you. So I want you to pause the video now. Okay, so here are the answers for you. For 5, which was asking for the number with the least value, that's 2 2/5. We know that because it occurred furthest to the left on the number line. Number 6, the number with the greatest value was 3 95 hundredths. That number fell furthest to the right on the number line. And then finally for number 7, the answer would be Abra, and the possible explanation. On a number line, 9/10 is further to the right, or farthest to the right, so Abra made more free throws, okay, than any other player. Okay, so this is how you compare fractions and decimals on a number line. If you have any questions about this topic, please come and see me.